Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session of eCAUG 2025. Thank you to Can for moderating for us. My name is Lucy Campbell. I am the Electronic Resources Librarian at San Diego State University. I'm here with my colleagues, Connor Franklin Ray, who's our Assessment Librarian, and Kevin Jeffrey, who is our Digital Technologies Librarian. Digital Initiatives Librarian, something digital. And we are going to talk this afternoon about how we developed the AI guiding principles for our library. So this is something that we've seen a lot from vendors. The first time that Kevin and I kind of came across this was at the Electronic Resources for Libraries conference last year in Austin, and JSTOR presented about their kind of AI guiding principles. Since then, Scopus have also developed guiding principles, and I'm sure lots of other people have. Just today, I got an email from EBSCO. You might have got that email too, asking me to fill out a survey about what the principles for AI technology adoption are at my library. So I think this is something that more people are talking about now, and it's definitely a conversation that I've had with other librarians as well. Well, how do we go about doing this? So this presentation is kind of just we're going to go over the process of what we did at our library, and then present the guiding principles that we have landed on, and kind of talk about the next steps. So we began by creating a task force with the specific charge of developing artificial intelligence principles for San Diego State University Library. And that was actually written, and the charge was developed by the Associate Dean. It wasn't something that came from the faculty, it came from administration, and it's the Associate Dean for, what is Randon's title? Is Randon here? Collections, digital initiatives, and discovery, or something like that.
That sounds like all the words that are in this title.
Yes, he's the associate dean for lots of things. But so basically, they wrote the charge, and the charge was to create a task force. So it's a kind of temporary committee with the specific goal of developing principles and also criteria that we could use to assess all of the different AI tools that we're seeing released from vendors to determine, which ones would we as a library want to adopt? What do we want to encourage students to use? What things would we rather turn off? So, students aren't presented with that AI option, or, discourage students from using if we feel it's inappropriate. And there's also this kind of second part of that, which is, our own workflows in the library. There are lots of AI tools. I know that, Ex Libris has presented quite a few of them today that can help with our own kind of like workflows in terms of acquisitions, cataloging, service, chatbots. There's lots of different AI tools out there. Which ones do we want to actually kind of integrate into our day-to-day work at the library, and which things do we think are better left alone or better left to humans, I guess? So the plan was to create a committee of librarians, and then we would, as a group, look at benchmarking against other institutions, do some research, or against other vendor kind of principles they've written, do our own research, and then kind of work on developing a draft that we could then share with the library at large to get feedback, and come up with hopefully a simple document that would provide some principles and also some criteria, a rubric which we could use to assess tools. So this was the group. As I said, it was myself, Kevin, and Connor, who are both here today. And we also had Sarah Tribblehorn, who's our Sciences and Sustainability Librarian. She's very kind of concerned with the sustainability issues around AI and has a lot of experience in that. So she brought a really unique perspective. And then Rayon Robinson, who's our Social Sciences and Data Librarian, who has a lot more kind of knowledge of the ethical aspects of AI, I think. So it was a good kind of cross group of people who are interested in AI, have different perspectives on it. And as I said, the membership were invited by the associate dean to join the task force. It wasn't kind of like a voluntary call thing. It was more like, would you like to do this? And people were invited to join. So this is the 5 librarians we ended up with on our guiding principles task force. And yeah, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was this issue I already mentioned, that there is a real practical problem with AI tools because there's just such a proliferation of them. Vendors are creating them all the time. This is the Primo Research Assistant, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. This was probably one of the first AI tools we were presented with that was rolled out by a vendor that could be turned on or off and could directly impact discovery for our patrons, for our students, for our kind of academic group. So, but there's been lots since then. We have now, JSTOR, we have ebook ProQuest one, there's Scopus AI, there's EBSCO has AI built into it. Everyone has AI, and there's also lots of different tools that are being rolled out as well. So they kind of look the same in lots of ways, in that they may look like sort of just natural language queries and then something, and it's giving you answers, and the AI is just responding. But the ways that they do it can be very different. The information that they're actually using to kind of create the answers can be very different. So, how do we, as librarians, make sure that we are kind of AI literate enough to understand what the tool is doing and be sure that it's something we want our users to actually engage with? So this was one of the first examples that we were looking at because it was one of the first ones we saw, and we kind of used it as a test case a little bit for developing our principles. So the goal of the document was to provide guiding principles and then a self-evaluative rubric. So it wasn't that this was kind of process or policy. It wasn't anything that anybody was going to be required to follow, just more that they're principles, so that if you as kind of an academic faculty member or, a worker in the library, you're thinking about using a tool and you don't know how necessarily to determine if it's appropriate or not, these principles might be things you could think about. So just kind of a helpful list of like, oh, well, how do I determine if it's good? Here's some things to consider. And then also a self-guided rubric. So we aren't like that, it's very sort of open-ended in that we aren't saying, it has to check these boxes. It's more kind of like descriptive, and then you as an individual can determine if where you think it lands on that rubric, with the goal of something either being adopted or not based on, how it's scored on the rubric. But it is still very kind of self-evaluative and not down to individuals to determine. Um, we added as well this piece where we said, integration of AI tools that have already been deemed to be useful, because I think that was the first kind of thing we landed on with a rubric, was just like, is this useful? Yes, no. Well, if it's not, then why are we doing any sort of, deliberate, careful evaluation of it in the first place? So we thought we would just take that out of the rubric, take that out of this process and say, you should have already deemed this to be a helpful tool for a workflow or a service or for something you're doing in the library before you then go to look at these guiding principles and look at this rubric to determine if you're going to actually kind of adopt it or not, if that makes sense. So it should already be deemed to be useful. I think I'm clarifying that because we've got a lot of questions from our library staff and faculty about what that meant. And we were just like, well, you should have already decided that it's got some use to it before you go and apply it to this rubric. So as part of the charge, our associate dean also like outlined what would be in scope and out of scope for the task force and for these principles. In scope, we had library workflows such as automation, scheduling, metadata, cataloging, acquisitions, analytics, all those kind of things that maybe are rote or could be improved in terms of efficiency with AI. We also could look at user experience, so chatbots, research assistants, discovery assistants, like the kind of Primo Research Assistant, and accessibility. Information literacy, so that's instruction in the classroom. We are seeing more and more are librarians being asked to either teach to an AI tool or to address AI literacy and talk about critically evaluating AI tools as part of the instruction they're doing in the classroom, as part of kind of info lit instruction. So, how do we kind of determine which tools are appropriate for that? And then also the sustainability piece of this, not just the environmental sustainability of the models, but also financial sustainability for the institution and operational implications. Very much out of scope with anything to do with personnel. This is definitely admin's call, so we could not make any sort of recommendations around, staffing, labor, or the RTP process. The RTP process is very much a faculty-led process, so that has to be decided kind of as a faculty at large if you're going to make any decisions around that. But we have had a lot of conversations about retention, tenure, and promotion, and kind of the use of AI in the process. So I think that's something that is coming next for our library, at least. I think our faculty are going to be having conversations around that too. But it was out of scope for the purposes of this task force. Okay, so this is basically a timeline of what the task force did, the work that we did. You can see that we started way back in April, and our final draft was submitted to library administration Monday, October 20th. So 10 days ago. It is still with library admin. They have not blessed it yet, but the principles are pretty finalized and they have been sent out and circulated to everyone in the library, and some faculty are starting to use the criteria to begin to assess tools. So we started off with a kickoff meeting, reviewed our charge. A couple of weeks later, we looked at the mission, vision, and values of SDSU Library, of San Diego State University, of the CSU, like discussed how that could kind of be reflected by the guidelines and the principles that we were going to build. And then we kind of like split up the research. So we knew there were certain areas about this that we wanted to make sure were covered, and we sort of separated them out between us and went off and did our own research. We collected resources. The last slide in this deck is a list of some of the resources that we reviewed in developing the guidelines. And then 3 weeks later, we met up again. We kind of presented our findings to each other, shared our recommendations. We brainstormed, compared where we were, tried to kind of like um, put things together. So when there was overlap between ideas, we were like, well, this could just be one idea, trying to simplify it down to a shorter list. Then we met to kind of work on drafting it and redrafting it before we then sent it out to the SDSU library faculty. And they had 3 weeks to comment in the document, to provide suggestions, edits, recommendations, concerns, anything they wanted to address about what we had written. We met again to review all the feedback we got from the faculty, and then we had a library-wide meeting with a lot of donuts. And everyone in the library was invited to that meeting to look at these principles and have a kind of library-wide discussion. So that was really important because it gave everyone a space to like air discussions and concerns around AI in the workplace, and that's a big part of what we're talking about here. Making sure that when AI is being introduced into the library, it's being done so thoughtfully and carefully, and we're being considerate about it. So making sure everyone had a chance to discuss that was really a big part of this. So the task force met one last time after that to kind of integrate all of the comments and notes that we had from that library-wide meeting and finalize the draft. And then we submitted it to library administration. So they got the draft, they got the timeline, they got the kind of process that we went through. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that's now going up to the dean of the library and will get administrative blessing. And I guess it will go on the website. I'm not really sure what will happen to it then. So it will be somewhere and people will be able to see it, and we'll be able to say, as a library, these are our principles around AI. So I think it's important for the faculty and for the staff to see that we are thinking carefully about these things, but also to communicate that out beyond the library to say, we aren't just um, adopting things. Oh, Terry says it's actually already on the web, so maybe they gave it its blessing and they didn't tell us. That's great. Um, so yeah, without further ado, Connor is going to go over the guiding principles we ended up with.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, so these are the guiding principles that the task force came up with in collaboration with the wider library. They are human oversight, explainability, ethics, accessibility, critical literacies, and sustainability. Um, we used each of these principles to sort of outline a rubric that folks in the library can use to evaluate each any AI tool they might be considering. For each guiding principle, we sort of gave like a range of points that you can give something, 3 points being the highest. That's something that's good. Two being meh, which is just a shorthand for like there's some good stuff mixed in with some problematic stuff, and then one being not good. So first up, in terms of guiding principles, human oversight, we champion human expertise. AI assists but does not replace library staff and faculty work. We encourage human review of AI output, support building expertise, and champion recognizing when to use it and when not to. So in this case, something that's not good is something that is going to be replacing our work rather than assisting our work. And something that's sort of meh is it has the utility and capacity for human intervention, but is available but unclear or limited. So somebody who's reviewing a tool would sort of make a quick judgment as to whether what score they'd give it, and then we sort of add up the points at the end and we set a threshold, although I'm forgetting the threshold we set right now. I think we said like 12 points is maybe something that we'd consider adopting. But again, it's sort of up to the judgment of the individual where the rubric is right now. So next slide, explainability. We are definitely encouraging tools that are understandable and provide a lot of documentation to ensure informed and careful use of a tool. Wherever possible, we try to avoid vendor reliance by prioritizing open or in-house tools and acknowledge that these tools rapidly change, which do present a problem for evaluating them in terms of adopting them as a library. But we'd say in an ideal scenario, it's something that's developed in-house, such as the AI research assistant that Kevin and Lucy developed for our library. Um, or there's transparent user-friendly logic available and trainings available, and the model is easily identifiable. And then worst case scenario, there's no documentation. It's not clear how the tool works. It's sort of a black box that is controlled by a vendor with maybe motives that we don't align with as a library, and the model may be, for whatever reason, problematic. Next slide, please. So ethics, we respect user autonomy, privacy, and intellectual freedom, and support the option to opt out of adopting these tools. We clearly communicate when and how AI is used, and we comply with institutional, California State University, and legal policies. And we will not knowingly use any exploitative model. So in this case, worst case scenario, something that's getting a score of 1, the AI is hidden. There's no consent or privacy protections in place for a user, or for wherever that data may be coming from to train the model, and negatively mitigates human experience, which is a pretty broad statement, but we sort of mean in the context of the use of the tool or in the development of the tool. So like, for example, where there are exploitative labor practices used to develop a model. Best case scenario, there's opt-out options clearly provided, has a published privacy policy, and then sort of somewhere in between, opt-out's unclear, data use is unclear, how it's hosted, used, or shared is not clearly defined, but maybe there's some language stating to a commitment to protecting privacy. Uh, Accessibility. We are committed, we say, to auditing tools for bias and exclusion, promote inclusive, equitable access to AI literacy by supporting underrepresented user communities in AI use. So I think a best case scenario for a tool we might be adopting as a library is it's meeting accessibility standards or exceeding them and is designed and demonstrated to be accessible and inclusive. Um, and worst case scenario, it's exclusionary, not accessible, or vendor siloed. And then somewhere in between offers maybe some accessibility features, meets basic guidelines, but also may present some sort of obstacle for a user. Um, Critical literacies, we promote AI literacy as an extension of information literacy, encourage users to develop personal research skills, and maintain academic integrity. So again, we are using an AI tool not to replace critical thinking or research, but assist students in their pursuit of that. And the rubric is set up accordingly. Best case scenario, it's encouraging critical engagement. For example, it cites sources that it's pulling from, um, and maybe doesn't provide clear-cut answers. And then worst case scenario, it's encouraging an over-reliance or discourages critical independent research. So maybe presents clear answers to questions that are complex or morally gray, etc. Sustainability. I think ideally are evaluating the environmental and financial impact of AI tools and choose interoperable, cost-effective, and maintainable solutions. We seek to minimize intensive use of AI when it has negative social and environmental impacts. Again, a very hard thing to do with AI since they are very large tools that are often on like global scales, but we doesn't mean it's not an important thing to pursue, and we set it as a goal to best case scenario be as low impact, cost effective, and supportive of our strategic plan where possible. And in worst case scenario, something that we would discourage is something where environmental impacts are clearly negative or just opaque, not clear. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we put our rubric to the test with the Primo Research Assistant. Now, I should say we did this back in July, so the Research Assistant is changing a lot. And some things are, are kind of built into it being a vendor tool. But so we looked at all of our guidelines and we thought the oversight, human oversight was okay. You throw your search terms in as natural language and there's no opportunity for iterative adjustment. We don't actually see what's happening in terms of how the search is coming up. I know as librarians, we like to see exactly what's happening. And we know there's probably a lot of semantic stuff going on behind the scenes. So we don't really see how the search is explained. We don't know why it's getting these 5 resources back. And I know, it's kind of trying to be everything for everyone. It's pulling from the CDI. So I know early on it was pulling things that we had decided to turn off in the CDI, like ebooks and things like that. So we thought ethics, we thought was okay. There's a privacy policy. But we weren't exactly sure where the AI lived and what was happening to the data that was being used. Now, the accessibility, we didn't think it was good because it's vendor siloed, but I mean, that's kind of built into the system. You could say the same thing, I guess, about Primo itself being vendor siloed. We thought the critical literacies, we thought it presents the 5 articles, but without explaining why. So this kind of builds it again into the explainability of what's happening. We can't actually know what's happening or why these articles are coming up. And I just did a similar search on this, and it came up with a book that was actually like a 1-page flyer. So I don't know if that was like the best tool we'd want to show our students. And we thought it wasn't good from a sustainability standpoint as it's vendor reliant and the environmental impact is unclear. So We gave it back in July, 9 out of 18 points. So we decided not to adopt it based on our rubric then. We should probably, in all fairness, we probably should have done this before this presentation, gone back and looked at the what's available today and as the research assistant. But there you have it. There is our rubric and how we applied it. So we're going to try to apply it to all the tools we have the ability to kind of adopt ourselves. Yeah. But
Kevin, we have like 4 minutes left. Do you want to quickly try and show our
oh, oh yeah, you know that.
research, our
Thanks. We
discovery assistant? Someone asked in the chat.
oh yeah, sure. Um, certainly.
Sorry, I made a mistake. I was looking at the timer of the meeting because I started way ahead of time. We still have 90 minutes till the end of the session. My
Right.
apologies.
Yeah, so it's a 30-minute presentation and 15-minute Q&A. But I mean, I
Well,
guess.
I'll show you one thing we did decide based on the discussions around our rubric. I mean, a lot of our colleagues were very suspicious of AI. Well, rightly so. I mean, not really suspicious, but there were concerns. So we built this little librarian finder and we added in an explanation of how AI was being used. And we also added in the ability to not use AI at all. So if, and this is a RAG model, a retrieval augmented generation. So if you search for frogs, if it works 95% of the time, but sometimes it just throws up its hands and says, I don't know what's happening. But a lot of the time, so it's found Sarah. So Sarah's our biology librarian. So a frog question would very appropriately be sent to Sarah. But if you wanted to, you could use a non-AI search, which would just look in our database of keywords we associate with librarians, which mainly comes from SpringShare, LibGuides, and things like that. But yeah, so let's see. We did
Yeah, I guess so. The rubric's been helpful for us developing AI tools as well, because now we kind of have to, practice the principles that we identified. So anytime that we're trying to like build a tool now, we're trying to make it, accessible. We're trying to identify the model. We're trying to be transparent, provide an opt-out, make sure that people know that there's privacy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And our own research assistant kind of was inspired by our disappointment with the Boolean operator used to search from research assistant into our catalog. And it looks, sorry. So it looks something like this, which I don't know. As a librarian, this is not a Boolean search I would recommend to a student. So we wondered, I think, Lucy and I, if we could do better. So let's take this search. So we worked hard evaluating a system prompt that we hope would build a better Boolean search than the one we're seeing from the research assistant. It's using a free kind of like open sandbox, but here's what we came up with, which we think is a little better than the no offense to the research assistant, but ours is a little more, we think, what we'd expect of a Boolean search. And we also use the Primo Search API to kind of go out and do some searching so you can kind of see what you'll get back. And we wondered actually, Lucy brought up the fact that maybe we've been struggling over how to use not. Maybe if you get 37,000 results, we should loop it through again and add in some limiters like a not or something like that. But yeah, and we also use this differently. It wasn't so much meant to be an interface for the catalog. We designed it to be more of a tool to teach Boolean operators so the student can come down and edit their own Boolean search, maybe add in different terms. So the goals were different, but it was inspired by the research assistant. So I don't know if.
Yeah, Liz asked if we could share the link to the guiding principles. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I didn't actually know that it was on a website anywhere, so
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know either. We're
okay.
like the least informed.
Oh, this isn't the guiding principles. This is something from our IT department. So I think this is SDSU wide. It's not library specific. I mean, the thing that was just posted in the chat.
Do you have the guiding principles
That's
you
a
sent
very
document?
long document. Do I have them?
Yeah.
I have like the document.
Yeah. Should we post that?
Yeah.
Is,
I just have like a Google Drive. I don't know if I can put that. I don't think anybody would have access to it,
I
would
think you
they?
could share it.
Just like the Word doc.
You could share it. Everyone could view it. You don't have to share it as an editable document.
Oh, you mean just share my screen?
No, I meant the link. I guess I could share it
Okay.
too.
Okay.
Sorry.
Wait a minute. I don't have it up. I can grab it just one sec. But yeah, if anyone else has questions, feel free to put them in the chat while I grab this document.
I've got a copy of it if you want. Yeah, so we did with the Boolean search tool, we did show this to a class. One of our colleagues teaches a 3-credit information literacy style class. We did show it to students and use it, and we are it has been used about 1,000 times to search one search. We've kind of only been tracking ones that are maybe that are you search one search, but we're kind of evaluating, we're trying to develop a set of 1,000 conversions because we want to try to fine tune an AI model. So Lucy and I have been going through and evaluating Boolean output so that we can have a good set that we can, I don't know, try to train. I don't know. Can we fine tune a model? We don't know, but we're going to try.
All right, Liz said access was denied. I just changed it so that anyone can view it. So hopefully that worked. Marie asked, at what point in the semester are you doing your rubric evaluation? I imagine you need to activate the tool to do your evaluation. If it didn't pass your rubric, you turn it off. Is that during the academic semester? Yeah. So as these tools are kind of being released, our plan is that we will then, as a group, be able to look at the rubric, look at the tool, and determine if we're going to turn it on or off. Usually, what we're getting is a vendor will send us an announcement saying, we have this new AI tool and it's going to be released next month or something. And so then it gives us an opportunity to look at it and consider these kind of different criteria and talk about if we want to as a library adopt it. We have an AI research guide on our website, so we do kind of highlight some tools there that we think are appropriate for students to use, so maybe we'll add them there. And like I said, lots of vendors have the option to turn on or off the AI, so it's not even like the students can opt out. Like we can opt out for everyone, right? We can just say we're turning that off. We don't want that. So when there's that opportunity, we are trying to, evaluate and decide whether or not we want to do that. So one AI tool that we are going to, as a library, be trialing next month, starting November 1st, we're trialing Scopus AI. And so that's going to be a good kind of test case for us as librarians to look at that AI, kind of play around with it, look at these criteria, and decide if it's something that we would want to adopt.
I see, Ken, you have your hand.
Yes, can I ask a question? Just audio.
Of course.
One of the criteria is about be able to explain the algorithm. I always thought except it's open source, most AI tools, we will not be able to explain it. You would not know how it's been trained or what kind of algorithm, what kind of fine tuning or uh, what they call RAG to adjust its accuracy, etc. So what kind of tool do you find you can give a high grade for explainability?
Yeah, I don't think that you can get down to that kind of granular level of explainability or really expect anybody to. I think that what we're talking about is more kind of, oh, this tool converts natural language to a Boolean and then searches that with that. Or, this tool basically takes it's retrieval augmented, and it's gathering together all of this information and producing a summary or producing key takeaways. What is the tool doing? Like, what is the specific prompt that has the prompt that's been engineered to produce that specific tool? Does that make sense? So
Right. So
what it's doing, not like how AI works, because that's
yeah, because it
very
will always be opaque to
yeah,
us.
yeah. But
First,
things
even if
like, things like which AI model is being used for the tool, I think can easily be shared, and that kind of thing is important to know as well, right? So for example, if you're using like a mini model, then that's highly more sustainable because it uses a lot less energy to use a mini model. That's why they developed those mini models, right? So as a user, if you know that the tool is built off a mini model, you know that it's going to be more sustainable versus, something that's using Chat GPT 5 Research Pro, which is incredibly energy using.
right. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you guys want to add anything? I don't know if I explain that.
This was an interesting process to go through. And I think, Christine and Shersley, their presentation earlier, we need to review these so often because they're such a moving target. We see that with a research assistant too, which I know works differently than when we evaluated it. I think it includes Alma content now where it didn't
Yeah.
before.
You can now like select content from your library as well, whereas before it only searched Clarivate content and it excluded anything that was in your library that wasn't Clarivate content. So vendor siloed.
I think too, it just speaks to like how hard it is to evaluate a lot of these things with these models, like the environmental impact or sustainability, or like even critical literacies, like how are users going to interact with a tool if we unlock it? Like if we're doing our due diligence, maybe we should like test every tool with users before we use it. But like these things we're being bombarded with these things so fast that it's just not really like realistic for us to be able to make that kind of evaluation. At least
Yeah, I
at
think
the individual institutional level. I mean, I think there's starting to be talks, at least within like the CSU, of like, maybe combining our efforts to evaluate these tools to
that would be nice.
because we're all being the same tools are being pushed.
I think to like Connor's point though about it being, it's really hard to evaluate these things, and to what Can was asking about explainability, one of the things that came up a lot when we were talking to faculty and staff in our library was kind of these ethical concerns. And people have huge ethical concerns about AI. And it is so opaque. You cannot know, if human labor was exploited to produce this model. In most cases, you can't directly trace an AI tool to these stories we're hearing about things like that, right? So, what can we do? Well, what we chose to do is just put in this sentence saying, we will not knowingly use an exploitative model. If it is uncovered that that model is exploitative, then we will opt out of it. But like, it is very hard to determine if something is or is not. So what we're saying is like, we as a library have ethical concerns and considerations, and we will maintain those positions when that comes to light. But like, it's not an expectation that every single model we use, we're going to have clarified that it's not exploiting someone first.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
would
sense.
love it if our library systems would develop our own tools. Like if we had a server running a few models that we could then use. I mean, we know that they're there. They're not sending our data anywhere because we're hosting them. I mean, that's all possible. It's just expensive.
Mhm.
All right, should I stop sharing? I guess.
Yeah,
Sounds like we're done.
no other questions? Cool. Thanks
So, all
everyone for
right,
coming.
would you be able to, if people reach out to you with questions, would you be okay with that? Okay, yeah, please feel free if you have follow-up questions to send it to the presenters of this session. Thank you all. Hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.
You too. Thanks, Ken. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Then this set of comments and questions, one like these notes, back and say, you need to do a better job. And what, those,
And I'll just leave the screen like this until the next session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I wasn't sure in the last session because I opened the chat and switched to look at the participants. I don't know if everything was recorded. Whoops, I should